Whyhammer. Sorry, I should say, oh, hello, and then Whyhammer. Or what are we doing with our lives? Or musings on why we do this stuff and why we care about it. I could have called it shower thoughts, but it's a bit more. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be a long video. Maybe it's going to be a thinky video. Maybe it's going to be a weirdly introspective video. Let's go. So first I need to expound on something that I have often kind of thought, right? And I call them personality hooks. And it's this idea, and you can observe this in anyone, in yourself, in your friends. Everybody, every single person has attributes, right? So some of them you're born with, some of them you pick, and some of them you just sort of fall into. So, for example, your nationality, your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your religion, your occupation, your family status, your politics, your musical taste, your hobbies and interests. These are all things about you that can be observed and written down, right? And that's not news, but what I find really interesting sometimes is the way that different people make different attributes core hooks for their personality. Right? So you probably knew someone, if you're about the same age as me and you went to school, who managed to make like listening to Linkin Park their entire lifestyle. Right? Like I'm into this band and that's gonna define my entire like personality, friendship circle, mode of dress, everything for, the next number of years. And I have colleagues for whom the fact that they're a teacher, like genuinely it consumes every moment of their day. Like they go home and they read education blogs and they do education stuff on social media and they look up cool ideas for lessons and they go, oh, I was reading this in the Times Ed and oh, I found this thing online and it seems genuinely to be all that they do. And they often found like coming into school, holidays and weekends, putting stuff in, all very admirable, but it's like their teacheriness is like their core thing, their core attribute. And one of the things you'll know if you have kids, or if when you do have kids, or if you have kids, the internet's full of people that are being a parent like their entire life, right? Like I'm gonna have a blog and a YouTube channel all about how I'm devoted to my children, and that again, this is all good stuff. I'm not saying that you should phone in your job or you should phone in being a parent or I mean, maybe you probably shouldn't get too into the music that you listen to, but like, it becomes like a really core tentpole aspect of their life that they think about, write about, research, and really nerd out about. Even though some of these things aren't particularly nerdy things, I absolutely think you can be a nerd in all of these things, right? Um, and it's possible to do and experience all these things in a pretty low key way as well. Like that's just as valid. Like even some of the things that are core identity things, like I'm disabled, right? I'm a disabled person, but I've never in my life wanted to join like disability groups or like disability rights forums or go to like disability meetups or any of that sort of stuff. Like it's just not something that's particularly core to my way of being. And it's no shade on people who want to do that stuff, but like people decide, don't they? People have these attributes. They have them. They have the job, and they have their physical attributes, and they have their family status, and their musical taste, and their hobbies and interest, and they decide which one, two, or three of those they're gonna like blow up into being like the main temple of their lifestyle. And I'm definitely someone for whom being a Warhammer hobbyist is one of those things that is, probably the if you were to put all the personality attributes I had into one of those cloud maker things and you were to weight them by how often I think about them, probably Warhammer would be the biggest thing. And maybe that kind of sucks for my children, but it's true. Warhammer's been part of my life for a lot longer. I mean, and that sounds hyper unreasonable, but it's just true. And maybe they'll catch up, right, as I grow up and the years go on, right? But it's a massive part of my life. It is a massive, massive part of my life. And so I guess I've just thought that it's. Well, let's talk a little more about this hooks thing. So part of the issue is that it's now much easier than it used to be to really deeply obsess about anything, right? So if you want to get really deeply into any topic, there's a subreddit. Not to dump on Reddit unnecessarily, but like it tends to be the main place where expertise like really solidifies. So, like, I once wondered, oh, I want a new keyboard. And I ended up buying a keyboard with, like, removable key switches, and the key switches are, like, Kali box jades. And I learned so much about mechanical keyboards and which mechanical key switch was right for me. Because there are all these people out there on Reddit. It's like, now I've come away with this massive knowledge dump. Like, uh, there's a really funny video on, if you don't follow him, why not doing it wrong? But there's a guy called ProZD who mostly talks about board games, but he does some other random stuff. And he did something about, like, before and after discovering the subreddit for a hobby. And it kind of exemplifies what I'm talking about, right? But it is so easy to become or to access real deep expertise of the kind that would take you a considerable amount of time to, like, go through and master and really fully understand. And so this comes and leads to a lot of weird gatekeeping, because if you're kind of low-key into one of these things, then, you know, people who are more into the thing than you kind of will, like, look down their end of the nose at you. So you run into people who are like, well, if you're a real dad that's really involved in your kids' lives, if you can't, like, name the pros and cons of 4 different parenting styles, and you haven't read all these parenting journals, and you aren't, like, you don't have a really considered a nuanced opinion on, like, well, no, we only feed these foods, or we only buy these kinds of toys, or, you know, we only do this, we do that, and, you know, after this many months we're going to do this, so we watch this television program because it's been reviewed by 15 professors to be doing this and that and this. Like, I love my daughter more than anything else in the world, but there's a lot amount of just love and winging it that goes on, right? It's not something that I spend hours of my day staring at Reddit going, gotta do this. And it's the same with teaching. Like, there's people who will say to you, like, or imply that you're bad or not doing your job properly if you don't go above and beyond, and you come in extra in the holidays to decorate your classroom, and you find out what the latest thing that there's a head teacher in North London somewhere that's been saying X, Y, and Z on social media, and I read it and I really think about it, so now I'm gonna, you know, join this group or try this activity or do this thing. And it's like, again, all very laudable stuff, but you let it consume a lot of your life, right? And it's the same with my religion. Like, I consider myself to be a Roman Catholic. I go to church on Sunday, and I believe in God. But I couldn't tell you the names of any of the cardinals and their stance on the Tridentine Mass, and, you know, all this stuff. I don't. It's not that I don't care. Like, I'm not going to say I don't care about Vatican politics, but I just don't have the time that I want to go and look at it and really get into it, because I only have so many hours of my day, and I don't actually think that is what I want to do at my time. All this, like, I'm not saying Warhammer's more important than being a dad. Warhammer's more important than being a teacher. Warhammer's more important than your religion. Like, I've picked things here deliberately that you'd think society would be like, oh no, yeah, those are things that are really wholesome, you need to really give your all to. And it's like, do you need to give your all to them? Because all is like a real totality now. Like, it's fine to just do things a little bit, right? It's fine just to do things to the best of your reasonable ability. You know, not everything has to be an overthought, over-researched thing, right? Because you can't. You can only have so many things that you become the uber nerd about. So, all this is to say, yeah, I am an uber nerd about Warhammer. I've probably spent more time thinking about Warhammer than I have thinking about most anything else in my life, right? Not actually necessarily deeply proud of that, but it's true. Okay, and perhaps, as I said before, as I age, these other things will catch up. But it's really interesting to me how people fall into having certain things that are real pillars of their life, right? So, once you fall into this rabbit hole for any belief, though, you just need to really, and this isn't really the main thrust of my video, but I'm going to say it anyway, like, please don't gatekeep people, like, and I know the word gatekeeping gets misused a lot as well, but please don't gatekeep people from anything just because you've absorbed the sum of all human knowledge, like, over the period of months about a subject, and they just quite like it and want to participate. Like, it's fine. People can like things to different degrees. But all this is a really long-winded way of saying that Warhammer really core. You look at all this stuff behind me, look at all the money I spent on it. Warhammer's a really core part of my life. A really core part of my life. So what is this Warhammer thing anyway? And I mean, if you're watching the video, that you have an idea of what Warhammer is, and you're probably a Warhammer guy, but let's try and think of a taxonomy of what Warhammer actually is. It's hard, actually, to think of the different people that play Warhammer and why they play it. But there seem to be three basic groups, right? The people that like to roll dice, the people that like to lick brushes, and the people that like to read books. So we're going to talk about dice rollers first. And so broadly speaking, if I say dice rollers, I mean the people who, the main thing they want to do is they want to play the game, right? And they could just easily be playing Warhammer, they could just easily be playing Magic the Gathering, they could just easily be playing a board game, really. Like, because the main thing they want to do is play the game. But this in itself is a massive category. There are loads of different, motivations for wanting to play a game. So, I just talk about some of the kind of archetypes, maybe stereotypes, but the archetypes, I guess, that I've spotted out there in the world. You've got armchair generals, okay? And these are people who definitely consume a lot of media about being good at Warhammer, right? They pore over FAQs, they read FAQ rundowns, they write a lot of army lists. They don't necessarily play the game that often. Certainly have a lot of opinions about what's going on, and they follow the tournament results. So their main thing is playing the game, but they don't actually play the game, which seems like an oxymoron. I guess the best equivalent of these people would be like really diehard football fans who have really strong opinions about the performance of the various football men and the various football man managers and all these things, but at the same time they don't actually get out there and physically play the game. It's kind of like that, right? There are people who follow the game part of 40k as a spectator sport and as a speculation sandbox, and that's fine, right? Then you've got casual kids, which I say kids. It's honestly how I played Warhammer, mainly well into my early 20s. Okay, and now I run a Warhammer club now in a school, and this is how I watch a lot of people play Warhammer. Like a lot of big multiplayer games, right? Very loose kind of. I've got about this many points. You've got about that many points, right? Rules are handled in a kind of a loose way. And the game rarely finishes, but the kids have a lot of fun. And I say kids, again, I played like this well into my 20s. We used to go around to my mate Gaz's flat in Liverpool. We had a massive table that we would deploy on top of a dining table, and we'd all put our figures down, and we'd all just play games. And very rarely was there ever like a concrete, no, this person has certainly won this game at the end, right? Because multiplayer Warhammer games are like the antithesis of competitive, and we weren't playing Apocalypse per se, but like it was basically Apocalypse. It was that kind of idea. It was Floorhammer, except on a massive table because we couldn't bend down as well as we used to be able to, right? Games played like this last a very long time, which is why they tend to be the best mode of play. Be a mode of play mainly for young people, because like young people don't often have a lot of other things that they should be doing. Although as undergraduates, arguably, we had other things that we should be doing, but we weren't doing them. Then we have, and I've borrowed a term from Glass Half Dead because it's such a deliciously funny and slightly provocative term. You have meta slaves, right? Or meta chaser if you want, but meta slave, right? These are the people who, you know, like Ash Ketchum, they really want to be the very best. Yeah, and every single time they play a game, it's played to tournament standard. They you know, everything is viewed through that lens of tournament practice, and they're usually playing with whatever list just won the last big event. So remember how Ace won a Warhammer World thing with Phobos, and then like the data then suddenly showed, oh, look at all these people that have now, you know, Phobos is now being taken by all these people. That's an example of what happens with meta slaves. They look at what's happening at the very, very top. And they go, I want to get there. I want to be like them. I'm going to do what they're doing, and it'll work for me because it works for them. And some people really, you know, it's not one of those things. I'm not going to say nobody who's a meta slave ever manages to do well because they don't have that X factor that makes them really good at piloting the lists. Definitely people that pay close attention to what lists are performing really well in different games and play those lists, many of them do really well. And that's totally... None of this stuff in the whole video is supposed to come as dismissive of any of these categories. And we talk about dungeon masters, right? The folks that really go for an extra mile and organise games for their groups, and they do homework and they craft a narrative. Maybe they type up a little campaign newsletter. these guys are often playing Necromunda, right? Not always Necromunda, but Necromunda is like the one game that's really crafted for these kinds of people. Like Necromunda actually has a name for the Dungeon Master. They call them campaign arbitrators, and it's really for people who enjoy that collaborative storytelling element that would more commonly be found in a pen and paper RPG, but they want it through the lens. I mean, it really blurs the line. I mean, so many RPGs now have so much miniature game in them, right? Like various editions of D&D. We always used to play D&D when we played it, like D&D 3.5, barely touched a miniature or a game map, but there have definitely been editions of D&D that have been designed seemingly first and foremost as a miniatures game. And I'm not a D&D guy anymore, so I don't know where D&D is at the moment in terms of like requiring that tabletop miniature bit, but it definitely has been there. And I feel like Necromunda and that kind of blur that line a little bit as well. It's definitely a miniatures game, but it is designed that you can quite easily have those. And indeed, the game's only really satisfying with those kind of more narrative elements, right? Then finally, you have, well, not quite finally, I've said finally twice because I'm a buffoon, but finally, you have casual dads. Now, you don't actually have to be a dad. I know I am a dad, it's bias, it's my channel, what you're going to do about it. You could easily be somebody's mum, or indeed, not have kids, but have other things that are pulling on your time, you know, other hobbies, God forbid, a job, right? Those kinds of stuff. You have other things. You can't focus entirely on your favourite personality attribute because actually, you know what? You love your kids, you love being able to pay your rent, so you have to at least dedicate a fair chunk of your time to the job thing, the raising a family thing, or maybe you got some other hobbies on the go, or for some reason you decide to start a YouTube channel, or maybe you still have one of them normal social lives where you just meet your friends in a pub and drink pints of bitter and talk about the day. I don't know, or maybe you're still dating, right? And you've got to have that part of your life where you're going out and meeting people who you might want to have a relationship with, and that definitely takes like time and stuff as well. Or maybe you're a student of some kind, you know, you're doing like a master's degree or something like that, and again, you've got some other demand on your time. Now, so it's not just dads, but it does tend to be, and these are guys and girls, I know I've used gendered language, but it was just because it rolled off the tongue so well, right? But who, they want to play properly, but they don't necessarily want to play well, right? So there's a lot of emphasis on playing with the rules, playing it properly, playing the 2,000 points match play, whatever it is, and rule of three, and you know, and not, and all the little different bits and pieces. But then the lists themselves aren't usually they're not the meta slave like lists like I've got out and because casual dads can't afford. Oh, well, wonderful! Like Votan are doing really really well. I'll just go and buy and paint and play 2,000 points of Leagues of Votan between now and the time that Games Workshop decides that Votan aren't going to be really broken. Like said no one ever in this category, you know. Maybe some of them want to be like, well, I'm gonna be like a meta slave, but with the models that I own and paint. But I'm gonna try and find the meta slaveriest way to play them and learn about as many tricks as you can. But ultimately, it's still got that casual element because casual dads aren't going out to drop money and even more importantly, hobby time on just yes, this is the flavor of the month, army. I'm gonna get that. And so the emphasis for this group is really people whom like the game has to exist in its finite amount of time, and it has to feel like the whole meal, right? In that time, you have to get the whole, has to have a winner, and the winner needs to be pretty clear to everybody what's happened, and they've won, and they've lost, and, you know, if you want to think about it and improve for your next game, you can, and that's kind of that category, but it's not really an emphasis on grinding to become better and best and pulling out all the stops. And then at the very bottom, barely worth mentioning because there's so few of them, you have the pro players. Now, I call them pro players. It's a misnomer, really, because they're not actually paid to play games. So they're often not actually professional. But they, if you understand academia, you know that when someone does a doctorate, a PhD, they the thing that somebody has done, if they have the word doctor in front of their name, is that they have contributed new knowledge to academia. They've actually discovered something or work, and it could be really narrow, like in this kind of school on this particular day with these children, I did this thing and discovered this. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking, but at the same time, it does have to be something new. Whereas all the way through education, up to that point, you basically are showing that you understand and applying things that other people have already written down, right? And it's the pro players that are the what separates the pro players from the meta slave is like it's the pro player is ace going, actually, I think I can win with Phobos. I've crafted a list and I understand it and I'm going to play it, and then you see all the other people like Meerkats that go, oh, Phobos, but there's so few. Like, it takes real skill and real brain power to actually look at the rules and not look for someone's Tactica, not look for a YouTube channel with someone telling you, always take the plasma gun or whatever it is. Just look at the rules in the book and go, oh yeah, that's be really strong. I'll play that. And getting that right, that's what makes you a pro. Okay, so those are our categories of dice roller. Then we got our brush lickers, and you think brush lickers would be a narrower category, but not really, right? There's a few here. So these are the people whose main thing is painting, or just talking about how painters, different categories of painter in the hobby, because one of them here, their main thing isn't really painting, but it belongs on this stage, on this slide, right? So you got the hobby recluse. The hobby recluse is somebody that loves to paint Warhammer. Playing the game, maybe they aspire to do it, they do it once in a while, and when they play the game, it's really just about getting the painted models off the shelf, putting them on the table, looking at them, going, wow, right? And then vaguely some dice are rolled and they put their models away. Now here's the thing, the hobby recluse doesn't always care about getting better. Sometimes they do, right? And it's like they want to get better and better and have each unit be better than the last unit, and there's a bit of a grind going on. But the hobby recluse often is about volume. It's about that, I painted a squad of 20 skeletons today, that's cool. And then the next week it's like, oh, I painted an entire Baneblade. And the next week it's like, oh, I painted, it's about getting it done, getting it on the shelf, and collecting and painting miniatures. Right? Now, often hobby recluses have a lot of notional knowledge about the game, because you'll find that they organise their collections. To go back to old 40k, they'll tend to have enough repeated squads of Space Marines or whatever to fill the minimum troops tax, right? And then they'll have HQs, they might have a few alternates and pieces, but they generally make sure their collections are correct enough that they could play a 2,000 point or whatever the game is. They care enough about the game to have a look at the army building. And it's still, because I was certainly a hobby recluse for years, the first thing I look at in a new game, almost before even looking at the rules, is the army selection. It's the most important part for me. It's what am I going to be buying and painting and collecting if I play this game? What's it going to physically look like, the stuff that I put on the shelf? That's what I really care about. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm not very good at games, because I don't look at the rules and then work out, well, based on my understanding of the rules, what do I want, what would work well? It's what can I have? What percentage of things have to be core or battle line or troops, or whatever it's called today? And then what can I have on other things? And then within that framework, what am I going to buy? That's how the hobby recluse, which I used to definitely categorise myself, I've definitely still have hobby recluse traits. That's how the hobby recluse thinks, right? Because if you're a hobby recluse, let me know in the comments. That's how it works. You just go, well, I can have this and I can have this, so I'm going to, yeah. Then that's different. You've got a different category, the reluctant painter. So the reluctant painter might be a meta slave. They might even just be a casual dad who likes the game but doesn't really want to play. But for whatever reason, and they might be a casual kid, right? Although casual kids usually don't. Whatever it is, they've been convinced for some reason their models have to be painted, either from peer pressure, from their Games Workshop store manager saying, you can only play it here with painted miniatures, from the rules saying, if you've painted, you get +1 VP or whatever it is. So they've been told you've got to paint these things, and they don't really super want to, but they will. So they'll go online and they'll find out about underpainting, aka slap chop, or they'll just stick on contrast paints, or they'll do whatever it is. And if they have cash to burn, then they may well pay for a commission painter as well. They don't really want to paint, but they're going to be there in the painting sphere, and there's a fair old amount of content and stuff aimed at that group of reluctant painters. It doesn't really fit into what I'm trying to do here, but because it's not people whose main thing is painting, it's the opposite. But in trying to come up with a taxonomy for what kinds of people play Warhammer, they're such an important group because there's so much content that's put out aiming at the reluctant painter. Then we got the striver. So the striver they want to have a nicely painted army for the games they play, but they're often kind of at a loss of how they do that. They look up a lot of tutorials, maybe they're subscribed to Whyhammer Plus or the Duncan Rhodes Painting Academy, or maybe they just subscribe to like the Painting Coach or one of these other people, and they want to get better, but in a very kind of they're not sure how much they want to push it between like, well, do I just want to go down some of the tips aimed at the reluctant painter because it looks good enough and I get the volume, or do I want to try and push it a bit more and get a bit more kind of fine with what I'm doing? And they can't, and they're kind of trying to straddle that line. They're not competition painters, which I've called here the pro painter, because again, the suffix pro gets wildly misused in the Games Workshop hobby, and I'm just going to roll with that. Pro painters are people that either have or really aspire to win a Golden Demon. And other painting awards exist, but basically these are the people who that's what they do. That's their hobby. They paint, right? And it's funny because the hobby recluse also, that's how they paint, right? But the hobby recluse at least has this vague idea in the back of his mind that I'm painting all this stuff so I have a painted army so that like notionally in 3 years I can play a game of 40k. The pro painter's like, well, I'm painting this piece so that I can enter it into Golden Demon, or whatever that might be, because that's what they want to do. And then they consume a whole other tier of content, and they talk to people and they try things and they do things and they have methods to try and get to that elevated standard. And it's like they often, the people that get into the cabinets and stuff at Golden Demon, they don't play the game. And I'm not saying that's not me throwing shade, but it's like they just don't know much about the rules, and then there definitely are people out there who are exceptional painters who also play from time to time, right? There definitely are, but also a lot of them don't, and they certainly wouldn't play. If they do play, they'll have, these are the miniatures that I have for playing with, and these are the miniatures that if anybody tried to actually play Warhammer with them, I'd probably want to break off all their fingers, because that took like 9 months of my life. So these are our categories of brush lickers. And then finally we got onto bookworms. Bookworms, really only 2 categories within bookworms here. So you got your bookworms who just pretty well consume lore. Like I knew one lady like this a while ago who used to eat, and she was into it to the extent where she would go to Warhammer Fest, to go to all the Black Library seminars, to buy limited edition Black Library books, to get things signed, to talk to authors. No interest in picking up a miniature and putting paint on it, ever, right? She used to play 40k RPGs with us, actually, but no interest in picking up a miniature or putting paint on it ever. That wasn't part of the thing, okay? And again, that's fine. People love the lore of the game. Like, one of the things about 40k is it has all this massive amount of lore. It has more lore, I think, than any other tabletop game that isn't cheating and going, well, I'm set in ancient Rome, so I've got lore for days because actual Rome happened, But outside of historicals, 40k is probably the tabletop wargame with the most volume of lore, right? And people will obsess about this stuff. And then you've got like bookworms that also play, and these, usually they're quite good hobbyists as well. And these, a lot of them play 30k, because 30k's got this pseudo-historical thing going on, and they'll collect and paint these armies and be like, well, this is actually the Space Wolf force led by Lehman Russ, for the sacking of Prospero, and I've read the books and I've modelled all these characters and units that are actually there, and they've got the right sigils and the right shoulder markings, and the bases will have like 10,000 Suns on it, and their miniatures really are a celebration of the lore before that, and then often they're a celebration of the lore and hobby, because all these things mingle together, right? So why do we play? Well, okay, cop-out Saturday morning cartoon children's answer is there isn't really an answer to the question of why we play, because it varies so much for different people. Different people are getting different things out of the game, and we should, respect each other and not assume everybody needs to care about the same aspects of the hobby that I care about. Like, I have people on my Discord who, when I show something that I've painted really, really well, and they will sort of frustratingly say, yeah, but it's a gaming piece. Well, okay, but not to me, And at the same time, I've got people who post things up that they've painted and they're just proud to have gotten the paint on the model. And there's people sometimes, not often because we're a pretty good community on the old Discord, but occasionally there's people who just go, well, you could have done these 57 more steps and it would look better. And I'm like, I sit there and nod and I'm like, yes, they could have done those 57 more steps and it would look better. but we have no evidence that this individual wants to spend the extra, like, 30 minutes per miniature that process that you've just outlined would take, plus the, like, hour of trying to master the process that you've just out. Like, some people want to be those strivers and they want to get better, and we get into this weird thing where, because people have different hobby, like, I post pictures of my stuff up all the time, and because I consider myself to be a striver, I often want like, oh, that's really cool, but if you did this, it would look so much better next time. Like, I often really want that. I never get it. I never get it. I think partially because, I'm on a Discord server with a big gold name, and people are like, oh, I'm not gonna, like, I don't want to risk the ire. I don't want to risk the ire of the community leader person. And there's probably an element of that, because I've seen other people get unsolicited critique, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually jealous of the unsolicited critique. And then often it's like, well, I know that individual in real life, and I know that they're not going to care for your critique, but I'm also jealous because I wish I got great critique like that for my own stuff. And I think we've got into this weird little hole on the internet where people are often scared to give feedback, because a lot of us have learned that the internet should be a hug box, especially for hobby, and we should just say, oh, that's great, it's great that you painted that, because every painted miniature, and there is something true to the statement, every painted miniature is a triumph because it's something that somebody started and then they finished and they're proud of it, and there are people out there that don't want to hear your critique, but then also there are these other people who are striving really hard and that want the critique so they can have, feedback and improvement. And it's really, really hard to thread that line online. Because there are some places where you'll post a miniature and you'll just get sworn at and told that it's shit, right? And then there are other places where you post a miniature and everyone will just go, wow, and it doesn't matter what you posted. Could have the thickest paint, the streakiest, thickest paint, and everyone just go, oh, well done, congratulations, well done, what's the next one? And it's like, okay. So I guess you've got to try and find the community. Maybe we need to have, like, server roles, like, be mean about I'm a painting masochist, be mean about my painting, please, because it's the only way I'll learn. And then for other people, like, I'm a painting Care Bear, please only say nice things about my painting, because I don't really give that much of a shit. And both of these things, totally fine, but people are different. And we can't assume. It's the same with games, like, again, I kind of want to get better when I play games, and I'd love to get feedback from my opponents, like, oh, if you've done this, and this, you might have won. But again, I think quite a lot of the time your opponents, especially if they just won, they're like, oh, I don't want to come off as a guy that goes, oh, if you're just on, here's how I beat you, let me tell you about it 75 times. You know that on turn 4, if you hadn't charged this guy over here, who I cleverly put out as a feint, and had instead charged this guy over here, you'd be 3VP up by now. And people worry this out of that. Now, to me, I'd be really pleased if somebody gave me that information. But I totally understand, again, there are other people who aren't there to try and improve. They really don't care. They're there to have fun and play games, and they don't want the after action debrief from their opponent. So again, it's a weird culture thing, isn't it? Completely lost. I never script anything, which hopefully you can tell because of the vibe I'm going for. Your vibe attracts your tribe, as they say. And if you're still watching this, then maybe you should subscribe, sir. So personally speaking, like, it would be an unfulfilling ending of the video to be like, everybody's different, hooray, let's celebrate diversity, and then that's it. I mean, all this stuff I've said is true, but it's just not. So let's be introspective and let's look into the soul of me, because if anybody's still here after half an hour of rambling, they're probably into that parasocial relationship stuff. So I, like most people, probably started off as a casual kid, right, into my 20s, played some serious games as well, like went to gaming clubs and played serious games as well, just to get more games, right, because people weren't always available. But the most memorable games from when I lived in Liverpool were the ones in Bixter Street, it was called, right, on the massive table, shoving models around while I was at university. Like, I remember those games, and I remember them fondly, and I've got no wish to revisit them. But definitely a casual kid. Then I moved away from my home city, and really, I became a hobby recluse. I tried to get into really itchy. Yeah, I tried to get into local clubs. Oh God! If anybody plays Kill Team and they're near Colchester in Essex, would you hit me up? Because it's just me and Zimbad have been looking. There's just nobody. It's like if you live within a certain distance of London, it's like everything's in London or in the part of Essex that's basically London, and you're like, well, I don't want to go to London, right? But yeah, there's like one really good, like well-known FLGS around here, but the vibe's just not for me because it's just full. In my estimation, I'm probably misjudging them, but like everyone in 40k gaming gives off the very meta slave vibe, and I just don't need that in my life. But if anyone knows any good casual dad gaming clubs in the Colchester area, hit me up. But yeah, I just became a hobby recluse, bought, painted, and collected as I just all through the pandemic. Before I got really ill, I was just painting models, putting them on the shelf, going cool. Playing the odd game with my wife, which yeah, I've got an opponent on tap. We used to play more than we do now, right? Because before we didn't when we didn't have a baby on the go. Now with Penny in the mix, it's harder to actually especially get for big games bigger than Kill Team, get the big table up and do all these things. And one or both of us is usually either really tired or really super mega tired. So, obviously then Zimbad, you started coming around on Fridays. We play games with Zimbad every Friday doing different things. We used to play like random stuff like Cursed City, Age of Sigmar, like Small Points Age of Sigmar, like little games of 40k, Combat Patrol type stuff. And then we really settled on Kill Team when that came out because it's the perfect for that Friday after work slot. And then I kind of became more of a casual dad after the pandemic because I was like, right, I want to get out there and meet people. And I'm so glad that I did, but I made so many friends. Or like, I don't know, friends is a really difficult word. Like, there are so many people that I know by sight and would know that I could totally follow them into a bar and I'd have a great time and be really happy. But at the same time, like, I wouldn't necessarily invite them to my kid's birthday party. But they're my Warhammer friends, and they are friends. They're just like a slightly lower tier. They're not like your personal friends. But they're more my friends than my work friends, apart from Zimbad, who's like a personal friend now. But, God, everything's hard, isn't it? Let's get a taxonomy of friend. There's a great taxonomy of friendship on Wait But Why, if anybody wants to. I really like classification systems. Don't know why, always have. But I've made loads of friends, right? Let's just use the word uncomplicatedly. Loads of friends going out to tournaments and playing Kill Team. And I can't overstress this enough. I know I've said this over and over and over and over and over again on the channel. I'm going to say it one more time. Like, if you are resonating with the stuff that I'm wibbling on about casual dads, like, you can attend tournaments. You should attend tournaments. You go to a tournament, at least for Kill Team, anyway. Like, maybe different game systems have different vibes, but they are not the sole preserve of meta slaves and pro players. Those aren't the only people at the tournament, right? You can go and you can play some cool, fun, relaxed games of Kill Team, certainly, where it's played properly, right? The rules are there, but people aren't necessarily playing with the most bloodthirsty play to win methods that they can, right? And you should definitely do that with yourself. That's really important, I think. Plus, tournaments need casual dads. There aren't enough especially not in Kill Team, there aren't enough pro players and meta chasers and meta slaves. Sorry, gonna keep using Glandy's terminology because it's just so delicious. To fill a tournament, so they need us, and we should go. And tournament organisers have a vested interest in making it accessible and agreeable for casual dads. And I'll always be here. If you're in the UK, I'll always be here to steer you in the direction of the most casual dad-friendly tournament scenes as well. But I've started doing a bit of a striver painting-wise. Like, I was always the hobby recluse. Like, I wanted to get stuff done. But for the longest time, I didn't get any better. And then I got a real bee in my bonnet about getting better. And this probably started around the time of the, I think the Kazakin, right, were probably the first team where I really tried and was like, okay, I'm not just going to go paint, wash, layer up high. I'm not just going to do the Duncan thing. I'm going to try something else. And I did the Cold War, the Gulf War, the Gulf War camo, right, the American Gulf War camo, the cookies and cream camo, on all of the Kazakin. I really tried really hard. and they didn't even get like selected in Warhammer Fest in like the first round cut for the painting competition, and I was kind of gutted. And then I was like, okay, cool. Well, I need to do something else. I need to do something with the display base, and obviously with something that was really real wow factor. And I looked at a lot of Darren Latham tutorials, and I really painted my heart out with those lamenters. I did the little check pattern and tried to do like proper volumetric highlighting with actual like blending and shit that previously like my painting had always been paint the thing the colour, right? Put the wash on, okay, get the original base coat colour back and paint that over the flats to where and leaving the washed bits in the recesses with like a thinner layer, right? And then do an edge highlight, right? And then maybe do a second edge highlight and maybe do a second layer, depending on how much you're trying to do. But with the lamenters, like I really tried to do like, oh, we'll paint the bottom third of the greave this shade of yellow, and then the middle this bit, and the top, then try and blend it, and then also do a highlight on top of the whole thing. And there was very little washing involved, and the washing that was all very selective washing, like placing the wash in particular place on the miniature. Really tried hard, and you know, I didn't get anything with them. And it's taken me a long time. Like I'm in a bit of a hobby funk at the moment to come to terms with actually like it's just the feeling of you tried your best, you tried your absolute level best, and it's not met the standard of other people in the kind of casual painting competition. You know, by casual painting competition, I mean people that are entering things that are still functional in gaming pieces. Like it's not a golden demon. It's not where people are going, this is my display quality miniature. It's where people are going, this is the army that I brought. I want to try and get best on. And it's just struggle. And it's only because other people are so good, but it does knock you back a bit. So this is what's kind of prompted this whole meaningless spiral of like what am I doing? What do I actually enjoy about this hobby? So this is my hobby desk right now. I've got three projects on the go, which is, if anybody knows anything about painting, like 3 projects on the go is a really poor place to be. The ideal number of projects to be doing simultaneously on your Warhammer hobby desk, for anyone in doubt, is 1. One is the correct number of projects. And when I end up with 3 projects on the go, I feel very kind of overwhelmed. So let's start in the top right hand corner. So these are some Celestian sacrosancts for Sisters of Battle for Warhammer 40k. And basically my relationship with hobby with 40k is that I paint the 40k stuff to my kind of normal tabletop standard, which I think is like I think it's a high standard. It's my tabletop standard, and I spend a bit of extra time on faces when I get to them. I haven't got to the faces on these yet, but like painting to my tabletop standard for my 40k army, and it's what I do to try and fill out my bingo card. You know, to get the hobby bingo card filled out, and I'm trying to also build towards. I mean, I need to get these finished because at least then I'll have 1,000 points of sisters. In time for Easter break, which is the deadline that I've set myself. And then I'm supposed to have 2,000 points of sisters at the end of the year. But the Chaos Warriors that you can see down the bottom have something to say about that, right? I want to get them done and get them cleared and get them away, because right now they've just been squatting on my hobby desk for so long. And those of you who tune into the hobby streams have known that I've been painting these girls for, it feels like forever. And it feels like they haven't moved on at all in that time. So I want to get them done because I know that if I just put them in the cupboard, like, that's it, they're doomed. You know, you put a half-painted miniature in the cupboard and it's doomed, absolutely doomed. But I'm not enjoying it. And if I'm not enjoying it, what's the point? But I will enjoy it when, I know myself, I will enjoy it when it's done. But what... Why am I giving myself an extra thing in my life that's like an extra source of... Anxiety's too strong a word, but yeah, like anxiety, like genuinely like, oh, I'm not spending enough time on my hobby is genuinely like, oh, I'm too tired to hobby. Like, oh, genuinely like, oh, you know, oh, I've got to be hobbying. And it comes to the point where I go, okay, I'm going to spend the next amount of time hobbying, and then I just sit here and go, oh, I'm just going to watch. What am I watching? Like clips from like Porn Stars, the reality TV show with the Las Vegas pawn shop, like on YouTube, just forever, to the point where my YouTube recommendations is now just that instead of any Whyhammer content, which is really depressing and it's going to take me a long time to fix. But hey, reality TV from like 10 years ago, cool. So then, like over on the left-hand side there, this is supposed to be my next big competition, like kill team project, which I'm definitely trying to finish for the painting contest and the kill team hobby challenge that I run on my own damn channel, right? And then I want to take it to the Not to Kill Team event at Easter. I've done all the building work and the prep and the undercoat, and I just can't bring myself to pick up a brush because I'm just not inspired by them at the moment. I don't really know why. And I always have this problem with Eldar to an extent as well. Like, I think, like, my Dark Eldar kill team is on my shelves half painted. Like, I always think, oh yeah, I'll do some Eldar. Eldar are cool. And then I look at them and go, oh, Eldar aren't cool. Why did I think Eldar were cool? And I've played a game with the Banshees now, and it was kind of awful. And part of me's going, oh, I'm not really excited to play them either. I'm kind of excited to play Night Lords or something else chunky that doesn't just die when a Kroot stabs it in the face. I don't know, but it's what I'm doing now, and I've spent the money, and I've done the building, and I've done the thing, and I've got the plan. I know what colour they're going to be, but I need to just knuckle down and do it. But if I'm not full of, like, the lamenters were, I managed to capture a certain amount of joy all the way through that project, right? Which I think really, I know it sounds twee, but I think that really showed through in the paint, and still wasn't met the standard that I set for myself, which was to get like a 3rd place trophy at the, but it. I just don't have any faith in myself that these are going to be better. I genuinely worry that those lamenters are the best thing I'm ever going to paint, and the other things that I paint will just be as good or worse. And then we got these Chaos Warriors down the bottom. I've been painting these this weekend and having great fun. So, Warhammer the Old World, those of you that have seen that I did a Warhammer the Old World video on the channel, and I've been talking about it on and off in the live streams, and I have... Yesterday, I pushed the button and I ordered, we got it, your order has been confirmed. 1,000 points of Chaos Warriors for Warhammer Fantasy, for the Old World. I've got 3 that I'm practicing on because Zimbad had some spares from a conversion project. He was like, oh, you can have these. I really like the way they've turned out, and it was kind of they're not finished. They're getting there, right, but it was kind of a quick, fun... And normally I hate painting metallics, but I just didn't beat myself up with these metallics nearly so much. I think they look great. Let me know. But I can't just pivot into being an Old World channel, or can I? Like, what am I doing for today's hobby? I'm painting the 3rd unit in my Chaos Warriors army. Fuck you. We've all done a Kill Team hobby challenge. Phil, you need to mark these. Well, these are all cool, but they're not as cool as some Chaos Warriors, are they? Like, have fun at your Kill Team tournament, guys. I'm going to have to bring my Kazakh in because I haven't painted anything else. I could. But it's tough. It's one of those things where if you... To an extent, it's like I've made my hobby my job. And so, in terms of the channel, like... Let's go on to the final thoughts slide. Because I can already see the comments. People are going to be like, chill, relax, take a break, play with your daughter, talk to your wife, take up watching TV and drinking lager, and you're allowed to just relax and be normal and do things. And, yeah, but I still have this thing at the back of my mind that's leaving me feeling unsatisfied because I haven't painted enough Warhammer. And probably that's a problem. But it's there. So then maybe the answer is just paint the wrong Whyhammer and become an Old World channel, right? Or just someone that talks about Kill Team, but then talks tedious amounts about the Old World, a game that nobody cares about. Or nobody that... YouTube does this really... Like, I never set out to be, and I've said this before, I never set out to be a Kill Team channel, not really. That's why the channel is called Tabletop Impulse and not, like, Kill Team Tactics, right? Turning Point Casuals. Like, you can tell the channels out there where they knew when they made the channel, like, this is going to be a channel about Kill Team. And you can tell the channels out there where they didn't think it was going to be a channel about Kill Team, right? And then it just kind of is now. And you're like, how? Okay. So whenever I put up a video that's about anything, I don't know how this. Occasionally, these weird little ranty videos get good views, although nobody is still watching at this point. Anyway, but like, I could make. Like, who wants to look at my Chaos Warriors from the old world? Like 200 people. Who wants to listen to my half-baked rumors about what's coming next for Kill Team? Oh, like 1,000 people. Like, okay, okay, Dave. So if I want to do this properly, there's that obsession, that casual dad thing of like, well, I don't want to do it well, but I want to do it properly. If I want to care about YouTube, I have to care about. And I don't want to alienate or lose my Kill Teamers, because I've built this whole community and I quite like it, and I like the people, and I like the friends, and I like the tournaments, I like the rest of it. I like all the rest of it, but hobbying on a Kill Team is just, I don't know. Maybe I need. I think I need some advice in the. Drop me a comment. Drop me a DM. Drop me a postcard. Let me know what you think. Big thank you to all my members, every single one, but especially Mr. Nightfall, who's once again subscribed at the top level, where he gets me to say his name at the end of every single video. Do share your myriad thoughts at the end of the video about my kind of unhinged ramblings. I don't know what this video has been about. And if you liked this video, of all videos, then you should definitely subscribe, because, you know, all the other videos are much better than this one. Have a really good night, guys. I know I'm going to have a good night because I'm shattered. So I'm going to go, as soon as I've uploaded this, and I'm going to go do some sleeping. Have a good night. God bless. Cheerio. Bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye-bye. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Cheerio. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.